Good morning, welcome back to the UN climate change coverage in Tianjin, China. You're on the OneClimate channel, and it's 10 a.m. here. I'm with Alex Stark from Negotiator and Karl Burkart, who's a digital campaigner from tcktcktck. This morning we're going to talk a little bit about US politics, what the situation is, and try and unravel it a little bit. Karl, perhaps I'll start with you. From an outside perspective, there's a lot of confusion about US politics. America's often held up as kind of the bad boy in climate negotiations, stopping progress and causing delays to finding a solution to this global problem. Why is that? Why aren't we seeing kind of more progress from more leadership from the US?
Well, yeah, I think all that's true to some degree. I mean, it's also a reality that we have, a very we have a thriving democracy in the good sense and the bad sense, in that our political process is incredibly difficult, and now more so than ever with the Tea Party having a lot of funding and gaining popularity. So, I mean, I would say the biggest factor in it is that no one in Europe really understands just the kind of dollars that are coming in to lobby against climate change regulation. There was a report that just came out a couple weeks ago, and if you look at the oil lobby itself is putting over $500 million just last year, and the coal lobbies, and the coal lobbies are doing kind of close to the same. So you're looking at maybe upwards of $1 billion being put into defeating any and every candidate, initiative, in the movement in general, to stop a regulation that would limit fossil fuel companies from doing business as they've always done it, which means they get government subsidies and they get to pollute all they want and they don't have to pay anybody for it. So we're up against something that basically no other country, I mean, not to say that other countries don't have lobbies, but in our country the lobbies are so powerful. And the political process is very long and drawn out. So that combination of things does make it hard, in the UN context, for things to move quickly from the U.S. side. I don't want to be the apologist for the U.S., but because, obviously there's a lot more I wish we could be doing in the UN context, but those considerations are pretty important for people to understand, especially in the European and Asian community. Countries don't necessarily know that.
So how do these lobbies work then? Because it's all, we know that there's a lot of oil money, but these oil companies have just spilt billions of tons of toxic waste into your oceans. People aren't blind to that. People see this. Surely they connect the dots. And whether it's released into the oceans or whether it's released into the atmosphere, basically it's just nasty stuff. Is there a kind of a growing feeling, do you think, Alex, in the US that that we do need to move beyond kind of dirty fossil fuels, or is there just not that recognition yet?
I think there is. I think the oil spill this summer was a wake-up call to a lot of people, because they would turn on their TV every morning and they would see this oil just spilling out into the ocean, and seeing the effects on the wildlife and biodiversity, and seeing what was really happening. So I think that a lot of people recognize that these environmental issues are real, concrete things that are happening. But I think it's difficult because, on the other hand, I agree with a lot of what Karl said. I don't want to apologize for the United States, and I think it does need to take a leadership position. It does need to do more. But on the other hand, as a result of the economic recession, we have a lot of unemployment now. And although the rest of the world looks at the United States and thinks, we're very wealthy, and we are, it's true, in terms of our economy, everyday families who have parents who are unemployed are sitting at home thinking, we can't spend money paying other countries to adapt to the effects of climate change, or to have clean energy technologies when, we're not even making an income. We're not employed. We can't afford to pay more in taxes. So it's very tricky right now, I think.
Yeah, and it's hard because, if you look at GDP, the per capita GDP in the U.S. is $47,000. In China, it's $3,700. Right. So, I mean, it's if you look at the numbers, we're just this rolling in money. I mean, compared to a lot of the rest of the world, but given the economy, the dent that the economy has taken in the past couple of years, the Americans don't feel that way. So it's a really hard thing for people to understand. It's it really is. People are suffering in the U.S. And I think that the idea also of the sense of restricting the economy, that's a talking point that a lot of the fossil fuel company people try to put out there that it's going to slow our economy, when in fact, of course, we know it's literally the opposite. I mean, for China, their economy largely is booming because of the clean tech sector, and they've more than doubled the investments, and so we need to do a better job in the U.S. of like helping people understand just how good this is going to be for the economy, because they're getting the opposite message right now.
Okay, I'll remind our viewers, if you're watching on Justin TV, then you can put some questions to us, and we'll do our best to deal with them. You mentioned the economy, and this is obviously a big issue, because from an outside perspective, it kind of seems like an issue that should you've got a convolence of an environmental catastrophe, you've got social problems associated with climate change, and then you've got huge opportunities to kind of take advantage of this new green economy. As you said, China investing massively here, Europe investing massively. I think US investment is less than half of what we're seeing here in China. So why don't people take advantage of this? So is there a risk that the US is going to get left behind? You're going to see other countries moving forward and kind of racing to the future, whilst you have the US dealing with kind of fossil fuels?
Yeah, I mean, that's good, exactly the right way to put it. I mean, I'm scared. One of the things I'm scared about, that we are in a pit right now in the US economy, and it could turn into a bit of a black hole if we don't start moving in the clean, in the direction. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I hope it does, but I mean, something I'm worried about, because America is historically, everyone looks to America as like we are the sort of bastion of like productivity, and we can make anything happen. And the World War II mobilization is constantly referred to, even in the UN talks, as like an example of how a country can gear up really quickly with technology it actually didn't have like the year before, and do something huge. So it's my concern that we're going to lose that opportunity. And you can see it around here in China. I mean, they're taking the opportunity big time. So
I'm just watching some of the comments come in, and people are saying, okay, well, fair enough, maybe it's an issue, but they don't want politicians running their lives for them. They have enough political intrusion, and I don't know if the US is the same as the UK, but people tend to be pretty cynical about politicians, often with maybe a little bit of justification, and they don't want them intruding in every area of their life. Isn't this just yet another example of something where have politicians sticking their nose into your personal life?
Oh, I'd love to. I know.
I'll hand this on to Alex first.
Well, I think it's true, definitely. There's a lot of, Americans often think of ourselves traditionally as being very independent, very, we don't want government to control our lives. And so a lot of people think that when politicians talk about climate change, what they actually want to do is, raise taxes, for example, and empower the government more. Whereas, actually, it is really important that we continue to be innovators, we continue to create new technologies and to grow our economy. So I think it's very tricky. I think particularly now there's a midterm election coming up in November. There's a lot of partisan division, especially in Congress right now, a lot of bitterness and a lot of cynicism that Congress can't get anything done, that even the president, who people were very hopeful about and people thought would bring a lot of change, has a lot of people think perhaps has not done as much as he could. So there's a lot of cynicism, I think, definitely.
The thing, I love that question, because it's one of these things that Americans really loved, the idea that they're completely, it's that image of the cowboy on his horse, and it has never left our society. But I always point out to those people that there are intrusions that we love. Mm-hmm. For instance, clean air and clean water regulation. Like in California, you look outside in Tianjin, I mean, the smog is so thick sometimes you can't even see a mile out. And that was what California looked like in the 70s, when we did not have clean air regulation. And California led the nation in the first comprehensive clean air bill. And that was an intrusion that saved lives of thousands, tens of thousands, who knows, hundreds of thousands, because if you look at cancer rates related to pollution. So that's an example of an intrusion that it should be very welcomed. And there are intrusions we don't want. Mm-hmm. But a lot of intrusions, like, roads, public schools, Medicare, there are intrusions that the people who are the first to criticize the government for invading their personal rights are taking advantage of. So it's something I always point out, that the government is there and it has a role. We need to embrace the things that it does give us.